Deighan Schenk is an animal rights activist and has worked as an investigator inside mink farms, egg laying facilities, and other Ontario farms. She's involved with various groups, including We the Free, the Animal Save Movement, Anonymous for the Voiceless, and most recently led a Meet the Victims action in southern Ontario that was shut down before it even got started, with police arresting 6 activists at 3 a.m. on October 3rd, 2021. I think this is something that every activist, regardless of what you're an activist for, we should all be aware of what happened here and concerned about this. I've never heard of this sort of thing happening before in Canada. So thanks, Jen, for taking the time today to talk about it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So before we get started, I always like to know how people found the vegan path. What inspired you towards that?
Yeah, I think it started from a young age when I found out how animals are used and killed for our food. So when I was really, really young, I decided to go vegetarian for a few months. And it was just a bit difficult where I was living in my home. And I kind of pushed that idea out of the way and just, went back to the ignorance is bliss sort of mindset. I went on that train again and I didn't go vegan. I was pescatarian actually, because I knew someone who was pescatarian, so it was a lot easier to do that. And I actually went vegan after seeing an Earthling Ed video of him on a dairy farm and just learning about the cruelty there. And I decided that, yeah, I couldn't participate in it any longer. And yeah, becoming an animal rights activist was just kind of the next step forward. Once I learned about the injustice that was happening to animals, I knew that I had to do something about it. So that's where that came from.
It's very inspiring, that's for sure. Yeah, he's very convincing. I love his journey's an amazing one too, as many of us grew up eating animals in that sort of ignorance is bliss place, and it's very liberating ultimately to break out of that, right? And then become an activist. So you've done investigations on mink farms and egg laying facilities and other places. How did you get involved with that? And was it like as an employee or more subversive activities?
No, I don't think I could pass for an animal agriculture employee, but no, it happened because I was just doing regular activism, like vigils and outreach and that sort of thing. And then when we were under lockdown, I wasn't able to do that usual activism of mine. So I felt like I wasn't doing anything for the animals and I felt like I had to do something. And I actually watched Animal People. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a really great documentary. And it inspired me a lot. And that actually is what inspired doing those investigations. So yeah, it stemmed from that.
So going on to mink farms and taking photos, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So just recording and yeah, documenting. I actually stumbled upon the mink farm by accident. And yeah, we were just trying to expose what was happening inside of there. And I had never seen anything like it. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know it was a mink farm until I was actually inside the barn. And then I realized where we were. And yeah, it was the smell in there is atrocious. And there were small babies the time of year that we went. They had just been born. So they were just little babies and they were all like crying out just continuously. You could hear their cries. And it led me to research about minks. And I learned that they only cry out when they're in distress. So that was really saddening to realize. And it was also saddening to be there and know that they would be killed in just a few months, just for something so trivial as fashion. So
Right. Yeah. I guess you've heard that there's talk of shutting down mink farms in BC now, finally.
yeah, I did hear about that.
That's
Mhm.
pretty huge. Maybe
Yeah.
Ontario will follow suit.
Yeah, that would be great.
So you never got caught when you were inside these farms?
Not inside the mink farms, no. I I was arrested at an egg laying facility when I had 7 hens. Uh, being rescued on the way out. We were very close to the road, and I guess a neighbor. This is what I received in the disclosure form. A neighbor had seen our parked vehicle and thought it looked suspicious. So then police pulled up who that vehicle belonged to, found out it was local activists, and kind of searched the area, and they made it just in time for us to be detained on that scene. So that was the only time that I was ever arrested on a farm property. Otherwise, no. However, with the mink farms, I did feel that it was necessary to call out these farms by name. Other farms, I've just said, like, this is, a turkey farm, or this is, an egg laying facility, and not said who it is in order to not get caught. But with the mink farms, being that they were so close to my city, they were just outside, I really wanted to put pressure on those facilities themselves, and also make people aware of how close it is to their home. And it is a dying industry. So because I was open about where it was, then I received charges after the fact.
And do you want to say now who they are, or no?
Oh yeah, so it was of course, yeah, Springbrook Fur Farm and Millbank Fur Farm. So Springbrook is in Wilmot, Ontario, just outside of Kitchener-Waterloo, and Millbank is in Rockwood, just outside of Guelph, Ontario. Millbank actually received 14 charges of animal cruelty in the past because of Last Chance for Animals expose. So that was an undercover worker. And Springbrook hadn't really received any sort of expose or anything. So, but what I found at both of those places was consistent in the filth and the conditions of the animals. Yeah.
Wild animals in cages is just wrong. Yeah, on so many levels. Any animal in cages, none of us should be in cages, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what you saw in the egg laying facility? Was it a nice chicken sitting on a little nest and nurturing her babies?
No, it was quite horrific. I'd never seen anything like it. It's very large as well. Basically what they have is they have these growing barns where they're all kind of, it's what you would call free range, where they're just scattered around. It's like a free range chicken, barn with no windows. What that would look like.
But with like hundreds of them trying
Of
to run
course.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're all crammed in there. So they have barns like that where they're just, when they're babies and they're growing up and they're not quite fit to be laying the eggs yet. And then once they are, then they're put into these other barns where basically what it is just rows and rows stacked to the ceiling of these cages with no bedding. It's just these metal cages, and there's about 7 hens crammed to a single cage. And yeah, and these barns go on for what felt like miles. Like, I think we went through them all and we counted how many were from the top to the bottom, and then how many were from across, how many rows there were, and how many hens were in each cage. And I believe we came to the conclusion that it was about quarter of a billion. It was about 250 million
Wow.
hens in that facility, because it's gigantic. So I couldn't believe the massive scale of it. And there was also just dead corpses, like, just tossed to the side.
Wow.
I guess at the end of, a work day, if they find any dead ones, they just throw them down the aisle and deal with it later. So there's plenty of that as well.
And so a work day, I mean, if you were able to walk the length of all of these facilities and not see a single worker?
Oh, so we would go at night.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. To be undetected, yes.
Okay, I see. And so do the eggs just kind of drop out of the cage into something? Like, how does that work?
There's like a scoop almost just underneath the cage. So the cage is a metal bottom, but then there is a slit where they can fall through and end up on these little trays, and then they can just grab them from the trays.
Because we know that chickens, I think Hope, Bohannic, and United Poultry Concerns have talked about how chickens talk to their babies inside the eggs, if they can communicate back. So there's no contact between the chicken and the egg in this.
They're just right in front of them.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they aren't physically touching them. No.
Oh my gosh, that's so horrible. Okay, well, Good for you for doing that, Jen. That's really heroic work. And so the Meet the Victims, how did you get the idea to prepare this for an attempt to expose hybrid turkeys in southern Ontario?
Yeah, I think I've thought about doing a massive civil disobedience action for quite some time. I've seen them done just through online. And I figured that, here in Ontario, Southern Ontario, there's definitely a lot of activists. Like we have the numbers to pull something off like that. That would be really huge. And I wanted to do it through Meet the Victims because it seems very organized and I just liked their style. So yeah, I did have the turkeys in mind. I wasn't like, completely closed off to other options, but I was planning to do it in the fall season, right near Thanksgiving, to raise awareness about turkeys. I find that they're a lot of the time a forgotten animal because, people call them the ugly birds. But really, I've volunteered at sanctuaries and they're quite remarkable individuals, and they have their own unique personalities and they're very intelligent, and they communicate with each other. They're very social animals. So yeah, I really wanted to capture what was happening to them and yeah, just do something that could really shake society and break out of the activist echo chamber.
Yeah, sometimes all we need to do is be able to see just even briefly for a moment, just so we can get that visual in our brain. Because once it's in there, you can't let it go. Is it a similar situation to chickens? How chickens are raised?
Yeah, I would say it's quite similar. Yeah. Just those kind of open concept barns, where there's no light or anything like that. Um, the major difference at hybrid turkeys is that they're a breeding facility as well. So it'd almost be like an egg laying facility in combination with, a chicken raising facility for meat. So they're doing both there.
Nice.
They're the largest supplier in the world of turkeys. So
Wow.
yeah, they breed turkeys there. So the breeding situation looks a little bit different. They're in enclosures with each other, like not individual enclosures. So it's not as open concept as that. And then they have these little coops that the turkeys can go into and like lay an egg, and then the workers can come and collect them. But when we were in there, I found that there was eggs kind of scattered all over, which was kind of nice because sometimes they would accidentally step on them and then they'd be able to eat it and get the nutrients back that they were losing. But yeah.
Yeah, I understand they do that on sanctuaries, eh? The chickens and turkeys get their eggs fed back to them.
They do. Same with egg laying hen chickens. If they're able, because they're bred so to produce so many eggs, more than they otherwise would, it really, really takes a toll on their bodies. So if they're able to eat it, then they can regain that nutrients that they lost. So I was happy to see that there were a couple eggs on the ground, but not enough to feed the hundreds of them in just that one barn. So
Oh, wow. Hybrid turkeys. It's kind of an ominous name, too, right? What are they doing? Genetic engineering? Well, they have to because birds don't lay eggs all year round.
yeah, so they're partnered with, or they're either partnered or the other name known for them is hybrid genetics.
Ooh.
So they're very transparent about like how they're toying with genetics for these turkeys. And of course, in all their videos on their website, the turkeys look in pristine condition or as pristine as they could be, but it's still awful. And they're very open about the insemination process and all of that, which
How does that work?
well, so they have the male turkeys in a separate pen. So an example of what like a barn would look like is they have all the females in these huge pens that are on one side of the room, let's say, and then they have the male turkeys in a pen, not as many of them, on a pen on the other side of the room. And every week they come with the artificial inseminators, and what they do is they stroke the males, extract semen from them, and then they with that semen they herd the females into one little section of their pen, and they artificially inseminate them just as they would other animals. So sticking the rod up their vagina and yeah, and just keeping the process going of them laying eggs essentially.
Wow. I remember hearing that animal justice had helped pass some bestiality laws, so in Canada, was that a couple of years ago? I mean, I would think that this would categorize almost as that, you know? It's like when people talk about animal cruelty and being opposed to animal cruelty, and then they make laws about it, and then they serve up dinner. It's weird, this disconnect, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So, all right, well, and so you wanted to, you didn't want to burn the place down, you didn't want to do any violence, you just wanted to go in there and take photos and maybe rescue some of the turkeys? Was that the intention?
Our primary objective was to get media to come inside. Uh, so for us to negotiate that, obviously, our our objective was to expose the place. But yeah, we wanted to negotiate for media to come inside. And then another negotiation that we did want was to, yeah, rescue some birds that were either sick or looked on the brink of death and have a vet evaluate them and take them to a sanctuary. But yeah, we definitely wanted the media to come in and expose them, which is what happened in BC at the first Meet the Victims action.
Right, they had some success with that, didn't they? And got some media attention, and then it all goes away. It's weird, but at least we have these moments. And so you were attempting to replicate what similar action that they did in Abbotsford at the pig farm there, that they're still waiting on their trial. Okay, and so you got organizers into Ontario from all over the place, it sounds like,
Mhm.
for this.
Yeah, we had activists come far and wide, all over Ontario, across Canada. We had one person come all the way from Israel. So it was quite astounding in the activist turnout, definitely.
All right, and so how many altogether do you think were waiting at the farm ready to go?
Well, no one was waiting at the farm. We
Oh,
hadn't disclosed that yet, which was unfortunate because no one really knew. Only a couple people knew, and most of those people were arrested. But they were waiting at a meeting location just close by, and I think in total there ended up being 160 activists, but I thought that the number was closer to 200, but that's what they reported in the media. So that's who everyone like showed up at the farm in the end, was about 160.
okay. Well, media tends to underestimate rallies and civil disobedience. They don't like us to know exactly what's going on. All right, and so you were one of the organizers, and you and what, three or four other people. Can you walk us through what happened? You got up at 3 in the morning to go to this event, and what happened?
Yeah, so we actually had suspicions that there was surveillance or an infiltrator or both, because an activist had arrived very early at the meeting location, about an hour earlier. And they told us that there was security there. And they said, actually, no one can park in this parking lot. Something happened, there's an accident. So we knew that they knew where we were meeting, which was odd. So it would have been an infiltrator. Uh, so we were panicked and we picked a new parking lot, gave that to activists. So yeah, I already felt a bit on edge. And then I saw like a car stall in front of our house, just at my window. I thought that was odd, but they drove away. So I thought maybe they were lost. And then once we're ready to go, we go out into the car. David, Kirsten, and I, we all lived together. And we also had Bridget over because she was out of town. So she stayed at our place. So David and I got into his vehicle. Bridget and Kirsten intended to get into Bridget's. And Dave started the car. And then police opened up our doors. And I first noticed them open up Dave's door and grab him and tell him that he's coming with them and that he's under arrest. It was really dark, so I couldn't even tell who these people were. It was very frightening. I was completely shocked.
So nobody had their phones out, I guess.
So I did have my phone in my lap. So my first instinct was to start videotaping him. And so I grabbed my phone and went to videotape him, and then he knocked the phone out of my hand. And then the
Whoa.
other officers started grabbing me on my side. Um, and yeah, I wanted someone to capture what was happening. So I actually started screaming for help. So that maybe Kirsten and Bridget were like, they weren't arrested yet and they could videotape what was happening to us. And yeah, I ended up getting thrown onto the gravel driveway and put on flat onto my stomach and arrested there. And we were all put into jail. So the four of us, plus Amy Serrano and Nick Schaefer at their Airbnb just outside of it. A similar thing happened to them. And we were all in jail, like wondering, like, what happened here? What's happening out there? And we had no idea. Like, we thought maybe the action just didn't happen, and that they didn't go to where we're supposed to go. And we had all the signs and so much stuff. So it was very, very stressful. But what ended up happening is that Jenny McQueen knew where we were going because she was our media spokesperson. So she had to know what she was speaking about. So she knew where we were going. And after an hour, she realized something is messed up here and they've probably been arrested. So she led everyone to the farm. And they just did a peaceful demonstration because when they arrived, there was blockades and they weren't able to get onto the farm. So they did a
Wow.
peaceful protest and did some speeches and songs. But there were a lot of police. There was, I think, 25 at the farm eventually. And then there were all the police that arrested us. So a lot of resources went into this. It also happened on a Sunday. So they were being paid double time. So yeah, an incredible amount of police resources went into making sure that we did not expose hybrid turkeys, because had we been arrested at the facility, we would have been charged for break and enter and maybe mischief. But instead, they chose to charge us beforehand with intent to break and enter and intent to commit mischief.
Wow, this is really chilling. So they knew who the organizers were. They pinpointed you folks, and they knew exactly which farm you were going to, and they knew where the gathering place was for the other activists.
They actually didn't know about the farm. I read recently that police reported that they actually had police stationed at numerous farms
Oh,
around the region. So they didn't quite know which farm it was. But then once people started driving there, then I think they rounded up the rest of them and got them all to come to that location. So they had barricaded, I think, several farms.
or they might have been preparing in case you guys changed your plans and went to a different farm.
Perhaps, yeah,
I
perhaps.
mean, it seems weird that they would have that piece of information and not the destination, right? How do you think they got that information?
So I think that there would have had to have been an informant in the signal chat to know where we were meeting, because that information was only released in the signal chat unless activists were negligent and messaged each other over something else about it. And there was just other things that indicated to me that I think there was an informant, but we were definitely being surveilled. I had a suspicion about it. I haven't received the disclosure form, so I don't know indefinitely, but I have a strong feeling that we were being surveilled, just given the information that they did know, and given the people that knew that sort of information. People didn't know where Amy and Nick were staying at the Airbnb, so I think that that information was obtained through surveillance. And I actually noticed like an unmarked white van outside of our home just a couple days prior, and right away, like it made me feel weird.
Hmm.
Had tinted windows, and I thought, like, that seems odd. So I think there was definitely surveillance happening, but we will know shortly when we receive our disclosure forms.
Okay. Do you think so? In terms of surveillance, you're talking about like data surveillance off of your phones?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think maybe just watching us of where we were going at certain points.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure, but I think definitely there was, yeah, something going on with the phones and with the Airbnb, especially. That's what really indicated it to me. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Amy and Nick are known as activists. I mean, they were involved with the Meet the Victims in BC here. So, I mean, it makes me wonder about the so-called vaccine passports. I don't know exactly what's going on in Ontario with those, but I think I've heard that there's data that goes into your phone, and you have to flash your phone for the passports, because there is concern in other activist circles about what this data is going to be collected for and how it's going to be used. Is that something you've considered?
I actually hadn't really considered that, no. But yeah, perhaps that would make sense, of as to where Amy and Nick were staying. So yeah, that is something that I hadn't actually considered at all, but yeah, it's a good point. I would like to know about that.
Yeah, there is really a lot of concern about, after Ed Snowden and others have revealed the extent that folks will go to collect our data, and it seems like the passport is kind of an ideal place where, because you get plugged into a database, right? So, all right, well, back to the police. Sounds like police brutality to me. So I imagine you have some pretty good lawyers who are going to be working on behalf of your defense, and then also maybe a prosecution of some sort for the police.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see what they decide to do with the charges, or the Crown rather, if the Crown decides to offer us deals or what. Um, but yeah, in terms of prosecuting the police, I've been told that it's quite a thorough and long process. So we'll see if that happens. I'm not entirely sure about it, but yeah, it definitely wasn't okay with what happened. And if we do go to trial for our charges, that's definitely going to be a piece of evidence that we'll bring up of how we were detained.
Absolutely. I mean, that must have just been a shock. And were you able to get badge numbers of the guy who threw you to the ground?
No, yeah, I could barely see. Like, I could barely see that they were even in uniform. It wasn't until I was really close that I could see. And then at that point, I was in handcuffs and just thrown into the van. So
And did they read you your rights? Did they told you why you're being arrested and all that?
yeah, they did, eventually. So once I was on the ground and he started to handcuff me, he told me why I was being arrested, and then they repeated it again when we were at the van, and then he read me my rights.
Hmm. And so when they took you to the station, were you able to communicate with each other?
Yeah, actually, I thought that was quite interesting. They were definitely trying to see if we gave any sort of information, because all the females were put side by side, um, and they put me in the middle. So I think they were trying to, yeah, see if we would communicate with each other and reveal anything. We just checked up on each other and made sure everyone was okay every hour or so. But yeah, we didn't talk at all. And Nick and Dave were actually put in separate areas. So I guess they thought that the girls would chat and the guys wouldn't.
And how long did they keep you there?
Um, they kept all of us for different periods of time. So because Dave, Kirsten, and Bridget had never been arrested before, they only kept them until the afternoon. So I think it had been about 8 hours. They didn't have
Wow.
to go through a bail hearing or anything. We were arrested at 3, and I believe they were released around 11 or 12. Oh, so not nearly as long, but yeah, know about that. And then Nick, Amy, and I all had to go to a bail hearing. So we were released um, around 6 o'clock, I believe.
How does that work, the bail hearing?
Basically, nowadays it's virtual, and what happens is that you appear in front of the Crown and someone else, the justice, piece of justice or something like that, and they reviewed the charges. My lawyer was present, and they basically release you. Sometimes I was released, release you under maybe conditions or stipulations. So I was released under the conditions that I wouldn't communicate with Nick, Amy, or Bridget. Since Kirsten and Dave live with me, they made an exemption for that. And that I wouldn't go near hybrid turkey farms.
So you can't communicate with these other folks, but you have a court date coming up November 17th. What's going to happen at that, do you think?
So we can communicate with counsel present, but otherwise not. Uh, with the court appearance on the 17th, it will likely get, this is just my own speculation, it will likely get pushed farther back. This is just how these things usually go. So, and we haven't received our disclosure yet, and we do need to receive that before our first court appearance.
And what I don't know a lot about the law, so what does the disclosure tell you basically what they're going to come at you with?
It reveals all the information they have. So basically, that we can't go to court, even if it's not trial, we can't go to court without knowing everything they have on us, essentially. So with that, we'll be able to know if there was an informant, if they were surveilling us, things like that. Just any evidence that they have against us.
They have to tell you that?
They have to tell us. They can't tell us, or they won't tell us who the informant is.
Oh,
They
okay.
don't have to do that, but they will tell us if there was one.
And if there's surveillance and data surveillance, do they have to tell you that?
They're supposed to, yeah, yeah,
They're supposed to.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that hopefully you'll press them on that because it sounds like there was something good, something going on there, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And so you guys, I guess, were prepared for arrest, not quite in this manner, but you go through civil disobedience training, right, in preparation for this?
Yeah, definitely. There are obviously people within our group that were more skilled for it. Amy was such a great asset to have because she's done plenty of civil disobedience actions. So she definitely helps me out a lot and other people in that sense. And Yasmin was great to have there, who came from Israel. She's the Meet the Victims organizer in Israel, and she led a great nonviolence training at our briefing. So that was really invaluable to have. And my roommate Dave has said like countless times that if we didn't receive that nonviolence training, that he would have maybe reacted poorly upon arrest. Like he wouldn't have reacted like he did in that situation because it was so shocking.
Sure.
Obviously we were prepared to be on the farm and those things and be arrested there, but yeah, just the way of being pulled out of the vehicle, it was, your first reaction is to like defend yourself or do something.
And of
So
course,
yeah,
if you do that though, then that just adds to the charges against you.
yes, yeah, absolutely. So even like resisting arrest and things like that. So we practice like being in handcuffs and all that sort of thing, and just being nonviolent. And there was a code of conduct that activists were all required to follow in order to participate.
And you had the lawyers kind of ready at the ready to help you out.
Yeah, so we had a group of vegan lawyers who were aware of the action happening, or not aware of the details of the action, but they were aware something was going to happen. And we had them kind of on standby there. And we gave out those numbers to activists. And we are going to all write them on our arms in the bus ride over. But that didn't happen. So I actually had to get them to look up my lawyer's number, which that works too.
Okay, all right. Wow, this is going to be an interesting documentary someday, right? I mean, what a story. I'm glad you have support, where you're living, that you guys can support each other through this, because I would imagine there's some residual trauma from that kind of an arrest as well.
Yeah, it was definitely traumatic, but it's nothing compared to what the animals go through. But yeah, for the first couple days of like being on our driveway, even I was like, oh my gosh, like I felt
Right?
like the eeriness. What was odd too, this is just random, but a couple weeks ago, someone actually broke into David's car and was just sleeping in there. And we were a bit nervous that maybe he had a weapon or something, so we did call the police and got them to take him out of the vehicle. But I just had instant flashback when I was watching them take him out of the vehicle. It felt like, but they were a lot more gentle with him though. But it was interesting to see that happen before my eyes, and I was like, oh my gosh, I felt bad for the guy, but he was trying to steal Dave's car. So
Wow, yeah, we shouldn't have people living in poverty, and then we wouldn't have things like that happening, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, do take care of yourself because that kind of trauma does it. it stays with us, right? And it's important to protect and nurture yourself. Absolutely. So, what else do we want to say about this? Oh, so back to the turkeys then. I'm just, I was speaking with Will Tuttle recently, and he was talking about how, you know, the animal agriculture, they hate vegans, of course. They hate especially the vegan activists, and they're not thrilled about the whole vegan movement in the world. But they have a way out. They can transition. They can become, producing plant-based alternatives, become part of the new economy or whatever. But big pharma, they really depend on animal agriculture. They sell a lot of drugs to animal agriculture. They sell a lot of drugs to humans who consume animal agriculture products and suffer all the health implications of that. So big pharma really doesn't like us even more than big ag. And I've never really thought about that before.
Hmm.
So do you know, like in terms of turkeys, they receive all the antibiotics and the growth hormones. Do you know the connection there with big pharma?
I'm not completely versed in it, to be honest with you, but I know that it would be very similar to that. And it's interesting because turkeys are marketed as the what is it, the leaner meat or
Right.
the healthier meat for you. But in reality, it's just, I think Dr. Greger puts it really well. It's like picking up the smaller hammer or the bigger hammer to kill yourself with, basically. If you're gonna eat in moderation or eat the leaner meat, it's just what hammer are you using or what club or whatever it is. So I think that there's definitely still connection in terms of the diseases that we can get as humans. But yeah, same sort of pharmaceuticals that they're going to be delivered. We actually did find some information regarding that when we were investigating just the list of drugs that they are receiving. So yeah, it's definitely a long list.
Because I guess because they want them to grow like as big and fat as fast as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're also trying to like combat the common illnesses that happen with them. When we were investigating, I saw a lot of sick birds, some that had collapsed organs, and others that had just wounds. And throat infections are really common with turkeys, and feet infections. So also trying to combat those, but usually once they have those, then they're just tossed into the gas chamber that they have on site and burnt in the incinerator.
Wow. Um, and so this was organized around Thanksgiving. That was great timing. You were trying to raise awareness for Thanksgiving. It's just such a story. So how can people support you and your legal case? I guess this costs money now to go to court, right?
Yeah, it is quite expensive, especially being that there are six of us. So yeah, any dollar amount would help us. We have a GoFundMe page set up, um, linked in this video.
Sure. Yeah. It's what is
Sure.
it? Meet the Victims Hybrid Turkeys or something?
Yeah, it should be just Meet the Victims Canada, uh, but I'll definitely get you the link.
Okay, that's great. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
and so November 17th is when you first find out. Well, no, you'll get the disclosure documents. You'll find out what they know, and then your lawyers can prepare, I guess, a response. And then what happens on November 17th
So
or whenever?
or yeah, whenever it gets to it. The first court appearance is more of a formality between the lawyers and the crown. We don't actually have to be present. So the lawyers are basically going to talk to the crown and see what the crown is thinking in regards to this case and see if they're wanting to move forward with it or not. If they are wanting to move forward with it, then they would set like a trial date, which would be a long time from now. But if they're not, then another another date would probably be set for us to sign a peace bond, or if there were conditions to the peace bond, which would mean that we were dropped of all charges. If we had to do community service, we would need to complete that, and then a date would be scheduled. So we won't know a whole lot until that, first preliminary court appearance, and that's really what it is.
So it sort of depends on what kind of judge, who the judge is, basically.
It does, yeah. I was really lucky at my previous two bail hearings. I had the same crown, and she was really sympathetic and very kind woman. So hopefully we can get someone like that as well.
Well, yeah, and it seems to me too that part of what they're doing here is sending a message to the rest of the activist community, like don't even bother trying because we got you, even before you leave your house, right?
Yeah, I definitely knew with this action that I had a strong inclination, and just with Bill 156, that they were going to try to make an example out of us. I had just thought that it would be at the facility itself, but yeah, they will go to great lengths clearly to stop us from exposing what is happening to animals. So it can be daunting, but at the same time, we know that it's right. It's the right thing to do to show what's happening to them. It's an injustice that needs to be exposed. So in my eyes, nothing will stop us from doing that.
And so you've been an activist long enough to see the differences then after Bill 156, which was Ontario's ag gag legislation that went into effect in June of 2020, right? So is it different? Do you notice a difference?
The biggest difference is that as activists is that we can no longer stop the trucks outside slaughterhouses. So it doesn't allow us to interfere with an animal protection zone. So a zone in which animals being raised for food exploitation of any kind, really.
Are in a protection zone.
They're in a protection zone on their way to being slaughtered.
Right.
So we can no longer stop those trucks. That's really the biggest difference as activists. We already, it was already against the law to not trespass. For, a regular person, now it's against the law for them to blow the whistle on animal cruelty at farms, or, any sort of animal protection zone. If they work there, if they're a journalist, whomever, unless upon hire they state that that's their intention to do that.
Oh, I did not know that. So it's even harder for like Mercy for Animals to get investigators into these places.
Yeah, so the interesting thing though is that Bill 156 is a provincial offense, so it results in tickets, whereas a break and enter is a criminal offense. So they're not going to, like, for something like Meet the Victims, they're not going to charge us under Bill 156 because I think anyways, because we would be let off a lot easier in a sense. There is a large fine that comes with that. We can be fined up to $15,000 if it's our first time offense under Bill 156, $25,000 if it's our second offense. However, if we go to trial for a break and enter and other things, it could even be more than that with legal fees. So yeah, I think that they nick us a bit harder with the break and enter than they do a Bill 156, seeing that it is a criminal offense.
Well, and I mean it's not though really because it's intent. But I mean you're talking freely that you did actually intend to do this. You're not denying that you intended to do this.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is there was those of us that did and those of us that didn't. But just anyone that was associated with Amy or myself was put into that category of being
Right.
with that. So
Right. Well, I guess yeah, it'd be interesting to be a lawyer in this situation. I mean, yeah, how they're gonna deal with that. Okay, I'm gonna watch this. Maybe they'll air it like they did with oh, I can't think of his name. The guy who, yeah, with Malcolm. They put it online, right?
yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, and so what are you going to do? What's the rest of your life look like, Jen? Are you okay? Looks like you're in a happy place there.
Yeah, things are good. I actually have a job with We the Free. So I'm the regional support lead with them. So yeah, most of my time is occupied with that, other voluntary activism, and my companion animal, Olive. So yeah,
Awesome.
things are good.
Awesome. And who's We the Free?
We the Free is an animal rights organization that specializes in street outreach. So the thing that separates them is they have a strong focus on data and analytics as well as community building. So they're a new organization. They were developed in the United Kingdom, but now we're starting to expand globally. So it's really exciting.
So data and analytics, how do you mean?
Yeah, so basically, like our approach and just things, any sort of activism that we're doing, we like to look into data. So the animal agriculture industry spends an enormous amount of money on data and analytics in order to know how to advertise properly and things like that. So we need to do that equally as much. So we actually measured the successfulness or the effectiveness rather of our activism. So we give people a link with a code, and when they enter this code, then we're able to see if they've gone onto the website, if they've watched documentaries, if so, for how long did they watch it, if they've signed up for Challenge 22, all of that sort of thing. So we would tally, how many cards we gave out and how many people through that did we see go onto the website. So it's quite exciting, actually, especially just for me doing street outreach for so long and walking away from conversations sometimes, and you just never know. And you would say, but who knows? Like, it felt like it went well, but I don't really know. But now you kind of do know. You don't know who it was, but you know that it was effective, which is cool.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you. Okay. Well, thanks so much for telling us this story. It's fascinating. And is there anything else that you want to say as we go?
No, yeah. Thank you so much, Janine, for having me. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for all that you do as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's great. Okay, and so we'll send people to the legal meet the victims GoFundMe, and wish you good luck. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thanks, Janine. Have a good day.